Now, as we all know, companies usually set out to make a profit on the goods and services they sell. However, that's not always the case. So today, we're going to look at a strategy called the loss leader and why companies may decide to use it. Basically, a loss leader is a product or service that the company is willing to sell at a very low price, even though it will lead to a financial loss. For instance, brand new products are often sold at a special promotional or introductory price. The idea is that this low price will help spread the word about the product, so in essence, it serves as a form of marketing. The low price will tempt people to at least try it once. And then, if the product's a hit, there will be enough loyal customers that will continue to purchase it even once the company has increased the price. So the rationale is that the short-term loss is worth the potential long-term gain. However, it should be noted that this strategy is of course highly risky. After all, there's nothing stopping customers from switching to other brands once the introductory price disappears. And obviously, any decision which involves a financial loss has to be carefully calculated. Large companies may have the financial power to take this sort of risk, but for a new or small company, the financial implications are huge.
Street art has developed from an underground art form into something which has achieved mainstream recognition and acceptance. It has its origins in the graffiti trend, which became popular in cities in the 1960s. At that time, adding graffiti onto public spaces was most definitely considered to be an act of vandalism. Indeed, it was hardly viewed as art at all, but rather as an expression of social frustration. However, over the decades, street art has developed artistically. Street artists have taken their inspiration from a wide variety of cultural influences, including hip-hop music and graphic design trends. Nowadays, many urban centres have colourful, large-scale wall paintings displaying uplifting or socially responsible messages. For this reason, street art is now viewed as part of the urban landscape and in some cases is a source of local pride. The street art projects I've just mentioned are of course officially approved schemes. However, some designs still appear on the sides of buildings without legal permission, and that's why street art is still a controversial art form. Nevertheless, it is now broadly accepted, to the extent that some street artists have even achieved the same level of fame as celebrated artists in other creative fields.
For many elite athletes, nutrition has become something of an obsession. It's been credited with giving them the edge over their rivals and ensuring the best possible performance, as well as benefiting general well-being. This faith is backed up by a wealth of evidence. For example, it's a long-established fact that high-protein food should be consumed immediately after an intense bout of strenuous activity to aid the recovery of muscles. Given the high stakes involved, the most enlightened football managers and players in the highest echelons of the game were quick to latch onto this trend and sought out the services of professional nutritionists and chefs. This has slowly filtered down to all levels of the game, and there's been a growing recognition that nutrition can be used as an important weapon, which can be modified to maximize the well-being of each individual in the squad. Long gone are the days of the ubiquitous post-match pizza deliveries to locker rooms. And you'd be hard-pressed these days to find a top player who doesn't have a personal chef and who doesn't subscribe to a strict dietary regime.
The distinction between architecture and interior design is artificial, but it has proved remarkably enduring. Architecture is seen as something substantial, whereas interiors are perceived as more ephemeral. Yet what is a house without an interior? An exhibition at the Vitra Design Museum in Weil am Rhein in Germany gives us the opportunity to examine the evolution of domestic interior design and its complex relationship with architecture, politics and progress. Interior design as a discrete discipline dates back to the 18th century. In the 19th century, the interior became a cultural battlefield. Many of the most prominent writers, including Charles Dickens, Edgar Allan Poe and Edith Wharton, wrote about the importance of good design in the home. It became seen as a site of social progress, didactic intent and self-expression for women. Critically, it was also captured as a tool for growth, a driver of design, manufacture and wealth creation. If architecture was a professionalized discipline, interior design was an acceptable amateur occupation for women. It is a generalization to suggest that architecture was a male world and interiors a female one, but it is embedded in the idea of a homemaker. To some extent, the work of all those women has been extinguished as fashions changed. What was preserved was the work of men.
Today, the Sahara is one of the Earth's largest deserts. However, 10,000 years ago, the climate was very different. The air was not as dry as it is today, and there were several large ponds and lakes. One of these was located near a cave, which was therefore an ideal home for early humans. Fish from these lakes was used as food by the people who lived there. We know this because a large quantity of fish bones was found at the site.
While we have explored space and sent people to the moon, one area that remains a bit of a mystery is our own brain. In particular, the different processes and operations our brains perform every day. Recent research has tried to show a link between physics and decision-making, and now a model using quantum physics to explain how we decide between two or more options has been published.
In retail, logistics is the process of storing and transporting goods and delivering them to the customer. You may not have considered logistics as being central to a business. Well, think again. People think of stores and websites as the customer-facing part of a business, but if logistics doesn't deliver, both literally and metaphorically, it can let the whole business down. It's not the promise of a product that a customer wants, it's the actual product delivered properly when they expect it. If they can track the package in real time, then that gives them even more satisfaction, as they can plan their time around the delivery and ensure they're at home to receive it, rather than having to set a much larger window of time aside. Logistics may have been undervalued up until now, but going forward, it's crucial and could be the defining factor in whether a customer places a repeat order or not.
Public speaking is difficult at the best of times. But what if the public speaker is in a position of authority? Such was the case for the British king, King George VI. He had a speech impediment known as a stutter that made it very difficult for him to pronounce certain sounds, such as the k in king. And, in a cruel twist of fate, his reign coincided with the advent of mass communication. This meant that news could be broadcast via the radio, which was then known as the wireless. At the time, speech problems were seen as a sign of mental weakness, and whenever King George spoke over the wireless, his speech impediment could be heard by the nation. Despite this, King George showed great strength of character by working to rectify his speech with a speech therapist, who gave him exercises such as tongue twisters to do. For those of you who don't know what they are, she sells seashells on the seashore is an example of one. Anyway, it's thought that a breakthrough for the king's speech happened as he started to believe that his speech impediment was something physical that he could change. The consequential improvements resulted in him gaining in confidence, and that led to further improvements.
You might not have heard of Vicenza, but it's a beautiful little town in northern Italy, not far from Venice. Now, Vicenza's architecture obviously isn't as famous as Venice is, but in my opinion it's even more interesting. Most of the buildings that you can see in Vicenza are the work of Andrea Palladio, who lived from 1508 to 1580. Palladio studied the architecture of ancient Rome very carefully and used what he learned to lay out a town of simple but beautiful white stone buildings. Palladio never used one brick more than he needed to. That's what's so amazing about his work, I think. And he succeeded in creating modern versions of ancient designs which remain popular to this day.
Winters in Tallinn, the capital of Estonia, can be long and cold, but it's hardly a place frozen in time. In fact, in less than 30 years, Estonia has gone from being an impoverished member of the Soviet Union to one of the most technically advanced countries in the world. It's the first country to declare the internet a social right. The government claims high-speed broadband covers 88% of the country, and 99% of its services are easily accessible online.
It's a country where you can do taxes in 3 minutes, when you can vote online from anywhere in the world, and it's still secure and safe and people.
As most of us are aware, there's a problem with misinformation, disinformation in the news, fake news, some people call it. And we wanted to find a way to address that. This allows citizens to get involved in a process, kind of a collective intelligence process, where they take an article and within 30 minutes, they've done all sorts of little assessments on the article that then are stitched together so that the article gets a credibility score. And we can also display on the article labels that will show and point out for a newsreader as they're reading inferential mistakes, argumentative fallacies, psychological biases. So this is going to change the way people read the news. And
The world's sands are shifting by the lorry load. According to a recent UN report, up to 50 billion tonnes of sand a year is being mined, dredged and even stolen to satisfy the global appetite for infrastructure. And it's disappearing faster than it can be replenished. The plunder of lakes, rivers and coastal areas cuts biodiversity, destroys fishing communities, causes pollution, lowers the water table and increases the risk of flooding. There are two types of sand. The first is mineral sand, which comes mainly from riverbeds and coastal areas like beaches. The second type is aggregates. That's a generic term for crushed rock, sand and gravel. It's coarser, easier to bind, and the construction industry loves it. The plunder tends to happen in countries with rapidly growing infrastructure and where rules are lacking, not enforced, or where there's corruption. The UN now wants to
Coastal erosion can cause existing beaches to be partially or completely washed away. This can pose a threat to wildlife that is dependent on specific beaches. For example, sea turtles return to the beach where they hatched to lay their own eggs. If the beach is eroded, turtles may build a nest in a place that isn't a sufficient distance from the sea. This means the nest could be flooded by seawater should the incoming tide reach a certain level. This can threaten the survival of the species. Fortunately, in some places, such as Costa Rica, volunteers collect turtle eggs so that they may be incubated in a safe environment.
Trees are indispensable in the natural world, and they could hold the key to the survival of the planet. Not only do they provide vital food and shelter for wildlife, They also have a part to play in slowing down global warming by absorbing carbon dioxide. In addition, they help to preserve the quality of land by adding to its nutrients and by preventing soil erosion. Yet undoubtedly, their biggest threat is deforestation. Many activities such as farming, mining, and the production of paper products result in deforestation. There needs to be a global effort to balance the needs of these industries with the preservation of woodlands and forests. Discover more about the campus in our Guide for New Students. Discover more about the campus in our Guide for New Students.
Technology is helping scientists develop new methods of protecting the environment. Technology is helping scientists develop new methods of protecting the environment.
Using different types of assessment encourages the development of various skills. Using different types of assessment encourages the development of various skills.